Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Nako Wants to Know. And today we're going to talk about what it means to follow your passions and what that looks like for everybody. I want to reiterate that everything discussed in this podcast is subjective and is very centered around my personal experiences in this life and personal opinions as well. I do not speak for the majority, but I want to share all that I have learned in hopes to spark and initiate important and inclusive conversations. I'm here with a friend of mine, and he is someone that I've just had real conversations with about following your passions. And before we get into the conversation, I kind of want to tell you how I view passions. Prior to the conversation that I had with Chris and upon the research that I did, I thought wholeheartedly that I knew what following your passions was all about. But I've learned this instead. Following your passions is a process. It's an ongoing process at that. It's tedious at times, a thrill, meaningful, and even rewarding. But it's really hard work and effort. And there's privilege in being able to have a passion. I'm aware of that. Many of us don't know our passions, and many of us are constantly changing, procrastinating, and not taking the time to invest in ourselves and our passions. And that's exactly what it is to me. It's self-discovery. It's learning your assets, your gifts, your talents, and using them to your advantage. Again, it is a process that is time consuming. So don't be too hard on yourself if you don't know everything entirely that you're passionate about right now in this very moment. I can say that the thing that I'm really passionate about right now is this podcast. I literally cannot begin to tell y'all the amount of work and effort that I've put in to make this at least somewhat quality. Origin of this story is another story for another day of why I decided to start a podcast, but I know that the purpose of this podcast is to have real, raw, and open conversations, to give people who typically don't have a platform, to give them a platform to where they feel safe and comfortable, and to be able to have these real and uncomfortable and raw conversations to educate, to learn, to relate. I think for me, that's what my passion is. It's being able to seek these people, have these conversations, educate myself in the process, educate other people, and just grow. Alrighty, I'm here with my dear friend Chris, and we're going to talk about following our passions today. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this and have this very real and insightful conversation.
Sure, for sure. It's always a pleasure.
So, in your own words, what is a passion?
A passion for me, it's something that's it's a very strong, deep desire that someone has that they would like to accomplish. So for me, a passion may look like something that I really want to do, maybe a hobby or a certain career that I want. That's really strongly, deeply rooted within inside myself.
And so, if you don't mind me asking, what is something that you are passionate about?
I'm really passionate about health. I think it's very important just with anyone. Many people may not know, and for the audience or the listeners, I have a chronic illness by the name of lupus. And so that's something that I find myself very passionate about, is helping others that have this chronic illness, figure out a better life, how to be happier while dealing with lupus. And so it's kind of expanded itself into just to helping people that deal with chronic illness in general. And then some of the roadblocks that I face while having this disease, it's kind of sprouted itself into just helping people with the different roadblocks that comes with having it. So I'm really passionate about helping people.
So overall, what do you think it means to follow your passions? And because you have lupus, what is a way that you can use that to help you follow your passions?
For one, it does make me more relatable to the people that have lupus, and then even people that have other chronic illnesses. So excuse me, when it comes to being able to help or work in my favor when I'm helping these people, we have something that we can bond over. Although
Mm-hmm.
it's not the best of things to bond over, we're still able to bond, and that aspect that we deal with the same kind of roadblocks, and so it works in my favor in that sense. But what it looks like when it comes to chasing my passion, it is pretty hard because when it comes to passion, some people look at you crazy when it comes to careers. um, the money is not in like the money is usually not in nonprofit. Let's say that, and the money is also not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in helping people. To some people, or according to some people, so that can be pretty difficult when it comes to finding a passion and also having a pretty stable income, I would say, or just kind of
Mm-hmm.
living well off. That can be kind of challenging to find, and so it can be a little difficult, but eventually you find a way to kind of make ends meet when it comes to trying to find your passion inside of your work, inside of your career. I feel,
Right.
you know.
I definitely agree with that. There should, and there, yeah, I mean, like, there should be a way that you're able to balance a career and your passion. I know that's definitely coming from like a place of privilege to say that, but even I think some of the most underprivileged people should have the same opportunity and can have the same opportunity. And speaking of others, do you think that there's like a set way for people to discover their passions, or like how do people learn to discover their passions in your own words?
That's always hard, but I think it all just depends on the individual. There is no set way. I don't think there's a set way.
Mm-hmm.
To my research, to my studying, there's no research. I mean, there's no set way. So, my biggest advice, and I think this just is something that you can give advice about, is that in order to find your passion, you have to figure out who you are. You have to understand who you are, how you perceive
Mm-hmm.
things, where you're at mentally, and you have to figure out that on your own. What do you actually care about? Because at the end of the day, that's what a passion is. Something that you truly, deeply care about, um, and that just depends on the individual. Everybody care about different things. We live in a world where people have different minds and people have their own
Right.
individual lives. They go through different things, um, and so there is no set way. But other than knowing who you are and what do you actually care about.
So, what is like some wisdom or advice that you would impart to people trying to identify what their passions are and how they want to like put it to action, I guess you can say, or be involved with their passion?
To take every day by the day. You don't have
Okay.
to. You don't have to. Procrastinate or do improv of the day, but actually be there and be intentional with your day. So
Mm.
many people are busy. Many people have work, school, jobs, whatever. But you have to be in it. You have to be fully there mentally, and
Mm.
enjoy what, or maybe you don't have to enjoy it, but you have to be there. And while you're doing those things, while you're actually there, you're there 110%. You'll understand, like, do I actually care about what I'm doing right now? So being there. So while you're working, you're at the computer, you're doing work. Do I care about what I'm doing? Okay. You may meet up with friends and you might really enjoy it. And when you're there mentally, you might have a conversation. It might spark a conversation about something that you truly care about. You're fully there. And that's how you start finding, what things actually excite me. What things do I not care about? What things am I kind of like in the middle about? It also
Yeah.
comes to like work when you're doing your own type of work. Am I actually into this? Do I actually care about this? And then also schoolwork. You're in a class that you may not even care about. Okay, and then
Mm.
you get into a class that you actually start learning. You start learning. Through that course, and you start to realize I actually care about this stuff. This is actually interesting. It's only that by fully being there and being intentional with whatever you're doing is that you will find some of the things that you're passionate about. That's my tidbit. But
Okay. I know. I really like that. And I think that it emphasizes how important it is to practice mindfulness. And like you said, being present in every single moment and being intentional. And I know that can be a lot, especially because our mind likes to wander and we have
Right.
A through Z problems going on. But yeah, being mindful and being present, I think that's super great advice. And I was actually reading an article from Forbes, and I also read another article that kind of glamorized Mark Cuban and his input on following your passions. And essentially, the Forbes article was based on a Stanford study that suggested following your passions is terrible career advice. And I think that the article made strong arguments, but I feel like they weren't offering solutions or alternatives to how you can still pursue your passions while having careers simultaneously. So one of the things that they suggested in the article is that saying that you want to pursue a passion is like saying that you only have one passion in life when passions change over time. So do you think that is something that is, I guess, prominent, like having multiple passions or passions changing over time?
I definitely agree. Just
Okay.
kind of like with what I was saying earlier, um, you start to care about different things. You can have a conversation and realize, oh, I'm actually that's actually pretty interesting. Let me find out more. And then you become passionate. When I was giving my analogy about the class, you may be taking a class that you didn't care about at first, but once you start learning a little bit more about it, the
Mm-hmm.
issues or the different things that you're learning from the course, you start to
Mm-hmm.
become passionate or you start to care about it. And then that could lead to a passion. So I can definitely see that. I can definitely agree with that.
I definitely think that that was one argument that was pretty solid.
Yeah.
But another one that they made was that assuming people already know their passions, to pursue a passion as a career is like saying that everybody already knows what their passion is. So I can say that I have friends who come to me and they tell me, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I care about. And I'm like, to me it's interesting to me because I know what I care about and I know what I'm passionate about, so it's very interesting for me to see people who don't know. So what is that like? What do you think about that? What is your take on that, like knowing and seeing people who don't know what they care about or like what they're passionate about?
I can agree with the people that don't know, what they're passionate about because I was one of those
Okay.
people. If we're being honest, part of me still doesn't know. Um,
Okay.
but it also comes with confusion and conflict when you're trying to figure out putting your passions into work. I know that you mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
following your passions is terrible career advice because it can be challenging. I wouldn't say it's bad advice, but it can be challenging. I can probably
Right.
understand that, but there's people in this world that don't know who they are. I was one of those. I challenged. You know, I went through an identity crisis, and I didn't really understand
Mm-hmm.
myself very well, and so it was pretty troubling with some of my passion, like figuring out what I cared about because I didn't know a lot about my own self. So, how can I know a lot about what a passion was or what a true
Mm-hmm.
passion was? And then it wasn't until, I figured out who I was and that I came present in my everyday life and, overcame those obstacles of, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now that I figure out myself, I'm a little bit more stable when it comes to, being mindful of things. So I can
Yeah.
understand that. You said that, some people that automatically knows what they're passionate about, automatically knows what they want to do. I can guarantee you that they're pretty stable people mentally. They're pretty solid
Mm.
or at least they have some type of, thing going on for themselves where they're dedicated and they're committed to it and they can wholeheartedly say that this is what I'm going to do. But I feel like when you have someone like myself that's going through, or like I was, that was going through identity crisis, it can be quite difficult to be committed to something like that you're not sure if you actually care about because you're not even sure about yourself. And if you can stay committed to that and that you don't really know about. You're questioning it. So I can definitely side with the people that's not sure what their passions are.
Mm. And now that you've elaborated on that, I can definitely say that I relate and I do agree because I can take myself as an example, right? I graduated early. I turned 21, and then I had this huge identity crisis. I'm working this summer job at UNT, just very lost about what type of career that I wanted to pursue.
Mhm.
And my like degree in communications already like broad as it is. So it really took some self-discovery and self-reflecting on what it is that I like to do. And it wasn't until months later that I had an idea, which is this podcast. And I'm like, okay, this is something that I really like. Let me put in the work to explore it and see how I can make this like what's the word I'm looking for? How I can make this more I guess particular to me, how I can make this more like for me, if that makes sense. And this is something
Yeah.
that I'm very passionate about, but it took months, days, hours, minutes of self-discovery and like really reflecting. So I definitely understand it. So thank you for bringing me that perspective. Um so this is another argument that the article made, and it made me laugh because I'm like, okay, this is true. So people are passionate about things and they have things that they care about, right?
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good at these passions. And so the example that they used in the article was like talent shows, for example. You hear that people go on to American Idol, they love to sing, very passionate about singing, but they don't particularly have the best singing voices.
Mhm.
So my question to you is, how do people, I guess, incorporate their passions into like, or just incorporate their passions in their lives, even if they may not be the best person for the job or the best like candidate for whatever it is that they're passionate about?
Well, I'm gonna start off with, everybody can't be like Beyonce. Everybody can't be a Michael Jackson. Everybody can't be a LeBron James. Everybody can't be a Soldier
Yes.
Boy. You name it. Because we have a lot of people that wants to do, something that, they're just not good at, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to not be good. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you truly care about because sometimes it's just not meant for you. I guess you can relate. This could be another conversation because I think it could get pretty deep, but like your purpose
Okay.
and your passions can be different. Something that you're
Mm.
very passionate about doesn't mean that it's your purpose.
Oh
You do
wow.
have people that are really good at things that they're really passionate about. But then again, you have to question like that's probably their purpose and that's probably why they're so good at it.
Right.
And then also, I mean, it just depends on how well you want to be good at your passion because that
Right.
requires lots of work. So, I mean, you do have people out there that's really good at stuff or really
Mm-hmm.
terrible at things. And if it's just your passion and you're not that good at it, then maybe it just turns into a hobby, just something you like to do.
Mm. Through you actually saying that, you made me think of something. I think that it could be also a matter of you as a person knowing your strengths, right? So
Yeah,
if you know what you're good at and you know like the things that you can perform well at, that can also guide you to like what you care about and building your passions kind of surrounding that. But that's very interesting to say, your passion may not be your purpose. That's very deep. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, and so for me, when I read that argument, an alternate that I kind of wanted to offer is that people can still pursue careers that are surrounded by that passion. You're not the
mm-hmm.
best singer, but maybe you can do like audio for these people, or you could do like behind the scenes type things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah.
think there's a way for you to be involved in things that you're passionate about, even if you're not very good at it, if that makes sense.
That does make
Um,
a lot of
so
sense.
thank you for your insight on that. That was funny.
I could
Um,
say I could say this. I do have to add this.
okay.
I am not good at science. I tried to be a biology major and I realized that it was not for me. However, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very passionate about health as I stated earlier. So, I was like, man, I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've like since I
Mm,
was diagnosed, I've always wanted to be a doctor.
wow.
And then I started taking classes and realized, bro, who am I kidding? I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I tried. It wasn't possible. So now I've taken the opportunity to work into health by going the public health route. So
Wow.
that way I'm still in healthcare, but I'm not exactly, doing doctoral work, you know.
Yeah.
So just to kind of second your
No, yeah. It
it
was a
makes
matter of you identifying your assets and putting
yeah,
them to work in the way that you could.
exactly. So I
Good for
see
you.
that. I can see that.
Okay, I love that. They also argued in the article that passions can turn into like tasks. So like things that we once were passionate about can turn into like tedious things that we don't care about doing anymore because it's like it takes all this work or it's very draining. So what do you think about that? And that's with the mindset of you turning your passion into a career.
Mm-hmm. So they can start becoming tasks. I can see that as well. Because if you're very passionate about something, you have to define work, and then
Mm-hmm.
work is work, and then man, I was listening to a sermon one time by Miles Monroe, and he was kind of talking about the difference between work and a job, um, and then working in your purpose. Some
Mm.
things like when you're working in your purpose, you know that you're supposed to be there, and it doesn't seem like work. So then you have your actual
Wow.
work. It's like, okay, I'm just here to make ends meet. So once I feel like if your passion starts to become work, maybe that's a mindset thing that you have to step back and take a look at. It starts to become tedious. Is it still your passion? Because like we also talked about, there can be
Mm.
you can have multiple passions. You know,
Right.
so is it was it truly a passion if you don't care about it anymore? Because if you're passionate about it, you know, maybe you're going to stick to it. Maybe you would think that this is something that I truly love. So you already know somewhat of the ins and outs. Why are you burning
Yeah.
out of your passion? How is that possible? That question can be raised because, it shouldn't have worked out that way. Maybe I'm not really sure, but mhm.
Mm.
It's kind of
No, it's no, right. Like us talking now, we're not really sure about a lot of things, but we are putting our best insight and perspective on it, right? And
yeah,
to like just be relatable and reach other people who may be kind of in the same position or predicament as us. So I really appreciate that.
for sure.
Last argument of this article before I get into what the article about Mark Cuban said.
Mhm.
Essentially, it is privilege in pursuing a passion. What do you think about that?
There
This one, this
is.
one was loaded. This one was loaded for me because it had me feeling some type of way. So I'm curious, how does that make you feel by saying like there is privilege and saying
Oh,
that I
there's
can pursue
definitely
a passion?
privilege in passions.
Okay.
Um, there's privilege in it. Um, I think I'm gonna let you answer it first because it's legislative. So I want you to tell us what you know.
Okay. I think about me and I think about this current passion that I have now. And I think of the hoops and the obstacles that I had to jump through to do the things to pursue this passion, right?
Hmm.
And yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was hard. But I am attuned to the blessings and the privileges I've had in this journey, especially financially being one of the biggest ones. My mom is one of my biggest support systems right now. Like I said, I'm a recent grad. I haven't found like a full-time job. And yes, I'm working part-time, but there is privilege in the fact that I can say that I want to start a podcast and I have all of this technology and this equipment to do so. Granted that a lot of it was out of my pocket, there is privilege in that where other people have to, put that money towards bills and things like that. And things that are more important in their lives currently. But like I said, I have privilege in knowing that like my mom's my support system. I'm aware of that.
Hmm.
But I definitely think that there is a level of hard work and determination and consistency that goes into pursuing a passion. So if you really care about these things, you're going to find loopholes through these obstacles and things that you have to jump through. But I definitely do agree that there is privileges in pursuing a passion, but it also depends on what that passion is and what you're trying to do with it and how you're trying to pursue it.
For sure.
I leave the floor to you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I just knew you had the perfect answer.
No, it
Um,
wasn't perfect.
but like you said, I definitely agree. You have people that are presented with different opportunities. So, for some, they may have a good support system, and then you may have
Mhm.
some people that don't have any support system. So it can be pretty challenging. And then, that privilege is very evident, for those that have a good support system.
Mhm.
Um, at the end of the day, what is privilege? I would maybe define a little bit of privilege as having connectedness and opportunities, and then a
Mm,
support system. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there is privilege in that, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done by someone that doesn't have the privilege. Um, you can wake up one day and just be like, I'm gonna make it happen, and it'll happen. So
yeah.
it's possible, but I would say that it's privilege and passions because some people just feel as if um, they can't do it. They can't go follow their passion at that moment because they might be in a crisis or in a bind where they don't really have the needs and necessities to actually complete it or follow through with it and stuff. But if you truly want it and you're very passionate about it, you'll find a way.
I have to say that I agree. So to end on this article, this is what Mark Cuban said on a separate article. He suggested that you follow your efforts and observe where you apply most of your time. How you use your time is the best indication of where your future will take you. I think the resonating factor is how you spend your time.
Okay.
So we've had a conversation about this, like you and I one on one, about where we invest our time, where we invest our time in people and the things that we're doing and the things that we care about, all of those things, how we invest our time. That really does make the difference in our day to day lives. So I kind of like that quote
Hmm.
for that
Yeah.
because we can make ourselves assets depending on how we like spend our time. If you're in bed watching YouTube videos all day, like what type of productivity comes for that? I'm not shaming those who do that. And I'm just saying like don't make that an everyday habit. Or if you are one of those people who loves to sit down and watch YouTube, okay, make sure the content is something that like you can learn from or something that you can create yourself and being more of an asset from. You know what I'm saying? That's just an example. Like I said, I'm not attacking anybody who sits all day and watches
Yeah.
YouTube. I'm just offering some type of like learn to be more mindful of the way you spend your time.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. Because obviously there's fruits in our labor. Um,
Mm,
there's fruits in our labor. We all know
I like
that.
that.
Whatever you use your free time, something of some sort comes from that. Something
Yes.
comes from whatever you have done. Whatever. My dad always said this. He always said, whether you make a good decision or a bad decision, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be consequences from whatever action you decided to take, whether it's good or bad. So yeah, I think that's a good quote.
Okay. So now that we have defined our passions and we've looked into what like all passions may entail, let's find understanding in what hinders us from pursuing our passions. So that could look like self-doubt and discouragement, and like learning to believe in your own capabilities. So my first question to you is how do you combat negative and self-deprecating thoughts, um, and people who may doubt you as well? How do we combat that?
That's a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
where do I want to start? I'm gonna start with it takes a lot with knowing yourself and knowing your capabilities. What is that? I think it's called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
That's that
Yes. Definitely have experienced a lot of
that
that.
is the result of insecurity, not being confident in yourself and your capabilities, knowing that you are qualified for whatever job or position there is.
Hmm.
So you can't get into your own head. But even further than that, how do you combat that? Relying on a support system. You should have a support system. They're really good in whatever manner they are, whatever aspect that you
Hmm.
have them. But you may have friends, family, that you can rely on in those type of moments, and usually they can help you be rational about the thoughts that you're having, and knowing that
Yeah.
you are qualified and that you can combat those negative thoughts, and then just a whole lot of mindfulness, knowing that you are qualified, being confident in yourself. But everything does start with you and being able to know that you're in charge of your own thoughts.
Mm. I definitely can say I'm a person who has a lot of self-deprecating thoughts from time to time. I could be very hard on myself, and I don't know. I just feel like I expect more from me constantly, and sometimes it is okay to sit back and um, take a breather and talk kind to yourself and tell yourself it's going to be okay. And you've made it this far. So you're more than qualified. Just taking time to reassure yourself and speak kindly to yourself. So I definitely agree with you in that. But it does get hard. And there's those really hard days
For
too.
sure.
And a support system is very important, whether that is your family or your friends, however that may look for anybody.
Yeah.
So, speaking of supporters and your support systems, do you personally have any supporters and like your passion, and why does their support mean so much to you?
Yeah. So I have my friends from school that
Mm-hmm.
are definitely a good support system because there's times where they talk highly of me and I don't feel that same way. That
Mm-hmm.
is a support system that I do rely on pretty heavily sometimes when I am feeling, you know, I guess not qualified for whatever it is or not feeling good about myself. I have that
Yeah.
support system to rely on, and then I have my family. That's a good support system. Them being there for
Yeah.
me and letting me know that they got my back with whatever I'm going through, and then I rely on myself, because at the end of the day, it's me that's going through whatever I'm going through. Um,
Yeah.
and I am in control of that. I 110% believe that that whatever is coming from me is I have some part in that, or whatever I'm going through, I have some sort of part in that, and I take that into account, and so I try to make
Yeah.
sure I'm getting in the groove. If I'm not in the groove, to get everything right.
Very powerful. Thank you, supporters. You're very much needed. I have a great support system as well. You're definitely included in that, Chris. So again, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so now for those people who are trying to maybe step into understanding the things that they care about and what they're passionate about, um, depending on what these passions can be, how do you make them obtainable? And like what mindset and action do you think are basic necessities just to start somewhere? You know what I'm saying?
hmm So yeah, like you said, discipline for sure. Discipline with discipline comes consistency. That's for sure.
Okay.
Um, Being truthful with yourself, honest. Those are two qualities that you should have, and
I like that.
vulnerable. Being able to be vulnerable is very big, also, because you have to be open. You have to be open to whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. How can you figure out, and you already have a preconceived thought, or you're not able to accept what it is that you're trying to find because you don't know
Mm,
what that passion is. You don't know how you may receive it. You don't know what circumstance you may receive it. You don't know. And so you have to be open, vulnerable, open minded in order to receive it the way that it's going to come, the way that you're going to
yeah.
have it resonate within yourself. So, you know, going back to being disciplined, you have to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable with trying to figure out who you are. Those are a couple of good characteristics to have while you're trying to figure out your passions, and just being dedicated to yourself, trying to figure it out. You have to be able to put in the work, put in the time with yourself.
Yeah.
That I want to figure this out about myself, or I want to figure out what I like, what I care about, and so maybe taking the time out a day to do some reflection. Let's start with reflection, and then you start going
Mm,
into taking care of yourself, and then you start to treat yourself and reflect on how you treat others and treat things, and treat your job, treat your everyday life, reflect on that and take care of yourself.
yeah.
Like really living a very healthy life is important. um,
Mm,
Having the knowledge about how can I put it, having the knowledge of what a healthy life looks like is important as well. So
mm,
I think those are some things that you can use, is being vulnerable, being open minded, being
okay.
disciplined, and being honest with yourself, and then taking the time out to be dedicated to yourself and taking care of yourself.
I was loaded with like a lot of good stuff. And we made it to the end of the interview, Chris.
Wow.
Yes, I know it.
Yeah.
And so, one of the biggest things that I like to do before I wrap things up is like last minute advice or a piece of parting wisdom. So, is there anything that you like to share with those who are tuning in and listening, who may need the motivation or push to pursue their passion? Just any type of advice towards it. All is welcomed.
For sure. My biggest thing is time. Uh, when it comes to trying to figure out very life impacting things,
Mm-hmm.
time will tell. So you have to be patient. Patience
Mm-hmm.
is the key to everything. It may not happen in a day. It may not happen in a week. It may not
Mm.
even happen in a year. You don't know, but you have to be patient. You have to be able to play the waiting game, the sitting game, and you also have to still be able to work. So just be patient with yourself and try to stay dedicated. Try to be motivated. If you need to go listen to something that's motivational, if you need to get some type of energy from something, some sort of motivating source, then try and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Patience is key. It is very key. You have to be patient with yourself and other people.
Of
So
course, of
that's all
course.
I got for 'em.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your time, Chris, and all that you've shared. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Anytime, anytime.